Have you heard of someone doing a couch to a 5K run? Well, my guest today has done a couch to a 50K run in 9 months. And that story is coming up right now. Hey, this is Eric with ericdieter.com, your ultramarathon mindset coach. If you want to do more and go farther than you ever imagined possible, click the subscribe button below and the bell for notifications. That way you won't miss out on anything new. I ran across a story in one of my Facebook groups that I thought I wanted to share with the world, with you guys, my subscribers on YouTube. Lisa Beth Adams went from not running at all to running a 50K in 9 months. Pretty incredible feat. I was impressed with her story. I asked if she would tell it to me in an audio so I could share it here. This is audio only, but it's worth listening to. Hope you enjoy it. I got inspired when I it was one of the groups that you and I are both in for running, and you posted something about going from couch to 50K in like 9 months.
Yes.
And so that was the story that kind of hooked me, because that's not something that's a lot of people even consider. So,
right.
so
Right.
so can you kind of give me I want to give you the opportunity to tell your story however you like. What was it that where were you at, and what was the thing that sparked you to say, I think I'm going to run 50 kilometers in 9 months?
Well, it didn't start off that way. That's the crazy part of it. It's like last January, actually it was in December, right after Christmas, I had acquired my largest weight without being, carrying a child. And so I'm like, well, this has got to stop going this direction. I need to do something about it. And so I started going to the gym, and that was it. My mindset at that time was just to go to the gym and start doing something about gaining weight. But along that process, I was going to the YMCA, and they have the treadmills, and I've never been able to run. My daughter is actually a collegiate runner right now. She does very well doing distance. My husband runs for the fun of it. He can do 5Ks and things, and so I always felt left behind because my body just never allowed me to run.
Mm-hmm.
It just I just couldn't do it. For whatever reasons, my legs would shut down, or my lungs and my heart would pound out of my chest, and I just couldn't do it. And I'll get into more detail as to how that changed. But while I was at the YMCA, I got on the treadmill and thought, I'll do a little bit of running on here just to help with my aerobic, to get my heart rate up, and
Right.
it should help me lose some weight. And I don't know, I got on it that day and I started running, and it felt pretty good. And so I thought, well, I wonder just how far I can go on the treadmill today. And so I just pushed myself and managed to do 2 full miles before my my left quad started cramping up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. So I stopped, and I was pretty proud of myself. I'm like, I've never ran 2 miles in my life.
Okay, that's pretty good if you just got on the treadmill and started going and got,
right.
got 2 miles.
And of course, this is really slow. I laugh because there was times when I went out on the trails this summer that, a box turtle would come out, and I'm like, whoa, at least I'm faster than you.
Yeah.
So, because I am 52, this isn't like a 20-year-old going out and doing these things. It's like my body is changing. And that was one of the other fears that I had, is like, okay, I don't want to be that old lady that can't use her body anymore. Other people are having to wheel you around. And
Mm-hmm.
like, if I get in an accident or something, fine. But on my own, I didn't want to be the reason why my body wasn't able to function later in life. So, but that 2 miles on that treadmill, there was something about it. It made me feel so like proud of myself and so like hopeful that maybe I could do something with running. That I went out and I started doing some research on YouTube and different things. I came across this, it just popped up in my feed about this woman who had run an ultramarathon in less than a year, and she was my age.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm going to do that. I have no idea why, in that moment, I'm like, it was one of those moments where something just strikes you in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I need to do that. I need to do that because I've never been able to run my whole life. What a great accomplishment that would be for me personally to be able to do that. So I started doing research, and just started researching all the different things about ultramarathon running. And one of the things that really struck me and made me super happy was that they could walk. I was like,
yes.
You can walk. You don't have to run the whole thing. And
most people can't run the whole thing. I mean, the ultramarathons typically are
Exactly.
on trails, and the hills are steep enough.
Exactly.
You don't run up them.
So I didn't know all of this going into it. I just had this heart to do something that would push myself beyond my current limits. And to add to that, to add to the excitement of that, is I had a friend that years ago, he had made a comment to me that the reason why it was taking me so long to get certain goals met in my life was because I was wanting to run, a marathon life. I wanted to have an Olympic type of life. And those kind of things require a lot of time and determination and patience and all of that thing. So there was something about this ultramarathon that struck that chord. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know what? I really do want to run this kind of life. So I want to do this for myself. So I just started doing it. I started going out, and again, I read like, I don't know, I have like 10 books here on all the different types of running and marathon running, ultramarathon running, trail running, all of these different things. And, and that's when I discovered just how much my body said, I don't think so. Because I had rules in my head.
Okay.
Because my daughter is a collegiate runner, right? Okay, it started with her running in high school, and she was cross country and track, and so she didn't have a coach, and so basically I coached her. So I learned everything about running through trying to develop my daughter to be a strong high school runner. She actually was, a state qualifier many times, and all of the things that it was a different kind of running.
Mm-hmm.
And all the running that they do, there's no walking involved in it, and you're always working on developing pace and speed and powering up hills and, using the downhills to your advantage and all of these things. So when I started to develop myself into this, I couldn't do it. And so I kept crashing, and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't run that far before my body just won't let me. There was all these different pains and aches and problems going on. So that's when I learned about that it was okay to walk, I found I can't think of the man's name right now, but he does a walk, run, walk for his marathons. And so
Even on the road,
adopted
right?
that. Yeah, he was on the road, and I wanted to do trail. But actually, I left out the part that when I found that woman had run that distance, I actually did some research to see if there were any ultramarathons for me, and found one that was 3 hours away. And so I signed up for it that day, paid for the entry fee in January, and I hadn't even run a 5K yet.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I'm going to do this. I just set my mind. I'm like, if I invest in it, put the money into it, then, it should help to encourage me to continue on, But what made it possible for me was when I learned that in ultra running, I could break all the rules that I had learned in, like my daughter's type of running. Right. But I could walk.
Which is competitive cross country and track.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. It was okay for me to walk. It was okay to take breaks, in between my distance. If I was doing a longer distance that day, that I could stop halfway through and take a breather, stretch out, and all of that, and then continue on. That it was more about getting the distance covered than it was about doing the time. And then giving myself permission to be last. Like, I'm never going to win a race, right?
Uh-huh.
There's no way at my age and all of that I'm ever going to win an ultramarathon. So you can let that go. And just, it was more about completing the distance,
Mm-hmm.
and just being proud of myself. I learned so much in those 9 months about who I was, what I was capable of, how to listen to my body, how to take care of the aches and pains as they showed up, how to become a problem solver,
Mm-hmm.
how to stay determined, how to stay on target, what to do with setbacks, because there were a lot of them.
Right.
So I don't know, where do you want to go from there?
How
What is your
did, I guess,
question?
how did you deal with it? How did you deal with those? I mean, what was what were the things that you did that worked for you as far as dealing with setbacks as you trained?
Again, it was about learning to be kind to myself and not making rules that were so rigid that when you failed to meet a marker that you had set in front of you, that was devastating. And in the past, that would make me quit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, okay, well, I can't meet that goal, so I just might as well quit. I can't do it. And that didn't happen this year. There was just a new mindset that came into play, and I'm like, no, I'm going to be kind to myself and just allow this process to unfold and learn from it. I made the decision. It's like, this is my beginning year. I don't know anything. So everything that happens is going to be a learning experience, and I want to just find joy in the journey. And so I journaled everything, and thank God that I did, because if I hadn't journaled every workout all along the way, writing down my time, my splits, the distance, the
Mm-hmm.
pace, my heart rate, all of those things, there were days that I had so much, like I'd have a bad knee day or a bad quad day or something, and it felt like I was going slow and not, having a good day. But then I would get home and I would look at my watch and compare it to, a couple days before and realize that I actually had gone a little further, a little faster that day.
Okay.
So having the journal was really a great way to see that I was nibbling away,
Mm-hmm.
and gaining progress over time, but it did take time. So I think that was the greatest part about the setbacks, is that, and they did scare me a little bit, because there were times that the setbacks were hard. I would develop pain that wouldn't go away for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to figure out where to trace that to and how to manipulate my muscles and tendons so that they would relax and let me go again. Discovering that not all knee pain is knee pain.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the knee pain that I felt actually was burst, if you will, up in my hamstring or up on my quad. And once I found that and I worked that out, the knee pain went away.
Right.
So there was a lot of learning. Just a lot of learning. But I guess you have to have something so strong that calls you to finish it, that will give you the determination to keep pressing forward even when things don't feel right. You have to make a decision to suffer pain,
Mm-hmm.
and that pain is good.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't allow it to determine your future. That it's actually just part of the process, and embracing it and finding a way to use it to your benefit. Let me see. I wrote some notes down for you. Some exciting things that made me feel successful, I guess, was like by week 5, I was able to run my first 5K distance in training.
Mm-hmm.
So that was encouraging to me, that I had actually made it to 3 miles and was able to complete that distance without feeling like I was going to die.
Well, that's pretty good to go from 0 to 5K in 5 weeks. That's a pretty ambitious progress.
Well, and keep in mind, and I want to make sure everybody knows this, that this was run walk.
Yes.
All of it was run walk. And some people who are really strict in running will look at my adventure and say, well, she didn't really run it. But it wasn't about running all of it. It was about completing the distance. And in the beginning, it was about running for me.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to be about running. I wanted to be able to run the whole thing, but that never happened this year.
Uh-huh.
And I had to allow myself, again, the permission to do that, like understanding that this was my breakthrough year into something that I want to be futuristic. And so I had to allow myself to just complete it in whatever level that I could, knowing that this was just the beginning and things would get better and better and better. Right.
So you actually had a vision for more than just the race that you had signed up for. You were looking at this as a long. This was the first year of your year. This is first year of your future as a runner.
Exactly.
Or trail runner, which trail running is different than road runners. Yeah.
Oh,
what you're saying is like
different.
Trail runners don't worry about walking when you have to.
Right. Yeah. And this is all about trail running for me too. And that was a learning curve because my body I started running on my gravel roads, which was fine. Mm-hmm. And then I had gotten up to a 10K distance, which I did that on week 9. I was looking at my journal before our call, and I had made it to that 10K distance by week 9. Well, then on week 10, I thought, well, I'm just going to transition this into the trails because I found trails about a half an hour from my home that had BMX bike trails.
Mm-hmm.
And those are pretty serious. I didn't realize what that could do to the human body until I got on it. And so I tried, and I was running most of the 10K distance. Like I did walk some of it, but I had gotten to a place where I was running most of it, and I was pretty excited about that. So I got into the woods, and I tried to repeat that. And I made it maybe 3 miles before my knees were absolutely trash, and I could barely walk myself the rest of the way out of the woods. And I really thought somebody was going to have to find me out there because I wasn't going to be able to get back out because the hills are so bad. And my tendons and ligaments had no idea what to do with all of those micro movements.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it is. There's all these different micro movements that happen with your legs and knees as you're trying to maneuver through all this different up and down and back, all this different terrain. So I learned a lot that day. But on June 29th, which was, that would be 5 months in, my husband talked me into running our yearly 5K because he and I put on a 5K every year to raise money for the school's running programs.
Oh, okay.
And so we enjoy doing that. And I'm like, oh, I've never run it before. I thought, I'll go ahead and run it this year just because. And so I did that and was able to run the whole race, which made me happy. And then 2 weeks later, a friend of mine, a new friend that I had met through the forums that you and I are talking about, that you and I met on, had wrote me and told me, it's like, you should try, some shorter distance races in between because it'll give you an understanding of what it feels like emotionally and all of that to prepare for a race and to get involved in a race. So I signed up for a 25K for July, and I actually went and ran that July 13th. And it's the Dirty Bird race, a ski resort.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, and it was 80 degrees that day and humid, hot, sunny. It was awful. But I completed it. I did complete that one, and it took me 4.5 hours, which was a long time. But
for 25K, that's not a bad pace, actually. Yeah.
Well, it would have been better if it hadn't been if they on each loop, and for my race it was 3 loops. You had to go up their largest ski hill and
mm-hmm.
back down it, and that was out.
And they don't have switchbacks. It just goes straight up, if I remember.
Right, it's straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So the problem that I had with that one was it caused my heart rate to go really high.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was so hot and everything, it's like I couldn't cool down and get my heart rate back down. So the whole race, my heart rate was in this super high accelerated place. And I just didn't know how to manage that and get that under control. So again, this whole year is a big learning curve. But I got it done, and I felt great about it, except for the fact that I was completely trashed at the end of it. And I'm like, okay, this is only half the distance
Yes.
that I wanted to do in a few more months. How is this going to work? But it did. It all worked out in the end. I don't know, what other questions do you want?
So you finished you did the 50K. What was the 50K that you did?
It's called oh shoot, my name's gonna go Through the Leaves.
Through the Leaves. Okay.
Through the Leaves. It's in Rochester, Michigan. And I wrote notes for that day went. If you want me to just read through my notes, and then it'll kind of give the play-by-play.
Sure, yeah. Hey, we just wanted to how that played out for you.
All right, so I'll just read through this, and it'll give you the synopsis, and then I'll explain what this has meant. This has been like the biggest transition, the best thing that I've ever done in my life, and it was absolutely the worst thing that I've ever done in my life. So the weather couldn't have been more perfect. It felt like God had set it up perfectly to be a success. I felt so ready. I went to the back of the line, and the gun went off. I felt confident and relaxed. I kept saying to myself, just go slow. Just go slow. Everything felt great the first loop. I felt like I did everything right. I ate my gels and Stinger honey muffles, and all was good. Second loop started off great. But by the 10-mile mark, by the 10th mile, after going down all the steep declines in the technical area, my knees began to show signs of damage. I wanted to run the flats, but I could tell that if I did, I would not be able to complete 3 more loops. So I speed walked and power hiked the best that I could. At the second loop check-in, they told me I was still 30 minutes, had a 30-minute gain to the cutoff time. I was already getting fearful that I might not be able, that might not be enough. I needed to run. The third loop was brutal. My knees caused me to baby step very slowly down the 3.5 miles with hills and declines. That alone, let alone the 198 steps. They had stair steps up this hill. It was just a lot. It was almost 200 steps.
Oh, wow.
I came in and had lost the whole 30-minute gain. My youngest daughter, Amy, comes up and tells me she will go with me the 4th loop, and my oldest daughter, Kim, will go with me the last loop. Amy had faith we could beat the mandatory cutoff time, but my knees were trashed. We taped them up and put my compression bands on and headed out. Amy found 2 sticks to use as support. They really helped do the hills, both up and down, but each and every step was filled with pain. Amy and I just started talking about anything and everything to make us laugh. The laughing helped distract my mind from the pain. The loop took us 2 hours and 20 minutes and 42 seconds, but I only had 2 hours and 5 minutes to finish it. I would get a DNF. I did not finish. I was devastated. This will make me cry. I was devastated that I didn't make the cutoff. No medal for 9 months of really hard work with so much pain and overcoming. My mind was reeling. What should I do? Tears were flowing because of the frustration. I was so close to my goal, but my legs. The second half of the loop was pretty flat. So since I wasn't going to get the medal anyway, I chose to go back out and go 3 miles out on the flatter course and then turn around and come back the way that I came. I'd still get in the distance to meet my goal, but take less damage on my battered legs. So that's what I did. I cried a lot those last 6 miles. I wanted this so bad. I prayed. I thanked God that I was healthy and able-bodied. Just thing. I thanked him for the weather. It was cooling off now and starting to get dark. My body was reacting differently these last 3 miles. Now, my entire legs, from my lower back all the way down to the bottom of my feet, were telling me they'd had enough. I got slower and slower as I went, but kept telling my legs, you can do it. We're almost there. It's amazing just how much you can demand from your body. The last few tenths of a mile, Amy came back out into the woods and found me. We walked together, and I noticed that I would get back in just a little bit too soon to reach the full distance. I had to do it all. I had to for my own mind. Amy looked up what regulation 50K distance was. It's 31.07 miles. So I turned around again and needed just a little more added for to get the distance. So it was another 0.5. And then I turned around and headed for the finish line. The staff called my name and cheered me in. I had done it. My watch showed 31.15 miles. As I met the racing director, she holds up a finisher's medal and hands it to me. She says, while officially it's a DNF, you did the miles and you feel you deserve the medal. I sobbed. I just sobbed. I was so tired, so full of pain, and God honored my hard work. I will never be the same. This race represented my life. Some choose to run a 5K life, a 10K life, a half marathon, 25 or full marathon life. But I wanted an ultramarathon life. So I had to run my race as though to win, even if it meant no reward, even if it meant permanent damage to my body, because I had to live my life fully expressing through my actions my faith to do what some deemed to be impossible. Impossible is only a word. So those were my notes. And it was very emotional for me, as you can tell, because what drove me to fight through all the various setbacks and pain along those 9 months and even race day was that in my heart, in my mind, this ultramarathon represented my life. And would I be successful with my life?
Mm-hmm.
Would I be successful? Would I put forth the effort? Would I be determined enough? Would I suffer whatever pain came my way? Would I be willing to do that? Especially race day when I knew that the medal was out of the question. I'm like, will I be willing to continue and be successful, even if there's nothing in it for me, other than the knowledge that I finished?
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I had the heart to do it. I learned that I could push my body and ask for more than it wanted to give. And finishing that day, the medal was great, and it's on my wall. I've made a shadow box. It's something I can look at forever to remind myself of this journey and that nothing is impossible. And the whole journey for me as a Christian was very spiritual because my coach was Jesus Christ. He was the one who led me and guided me all that I needed to learn, to educate myself. He brought people into my life to mentor me, to give me the information that I needed to relax and enjoy the journey. And so it just, going forward from the time that I finished that race until today, I'm a new person. I feel like I've already won. Like anything that I do in my life going forward is icing on the cake because I know that I'm going to finish my race well. I know I'm going to finish my life well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know now that I have everything that it takes inside my heart to push past anything that gets in my way and actually make it happen. It's empowered me.
Mm-hmm.
And people recognize it.
So you've had people other than people in your life who have recognized a change in you since you've done this?
Oh, absolutely. They tell me I'm shining brighter. They say, you just shine. You just shine brighter than normal. You look amazing. You look powerful. Like, they can see that there's like, it's like the voice of the enemy speaks and tells you that you're going to be a failure your whole life and tries to knock you down and beat you up. But when you can kick him in the teeth and be successful at something like this level, it's like, no, that lie doesn't have any power in my life anymore. It just doesn't have any power.
Yeah.
And so now going forward, it's like I still want to do more, but the races going forward are just for fun now. It doesn't have the same meaning. It's something that I want to do, but I just have to wait now for my knees to heal, because I did do quite a bit of damage to my knees.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of the story.
So I guess I'm curious. Did you have, before you started this journey, did you have the same kind of drive? I mean, it sounds like you kind of hit a turning point of saying I don't want to be going the direction I'm going anymore. I want something different.
Right.
And you went through this. So before you started this, I guess my question is, was that drive and the determination that you feel now something you developed over that period of training to change your life?
It definitely developed more. I've had seasons in my life where I had strong determination to get a goal accomplished. You know, like I told you before, I trained dogs, and I became very good at what I did. And I traveled all over and was quite successful with them. And so there was a drive there, but it was because it was something I enjoyed. But when it's something that you don't enjoy, when it's something that causes you pain and suffering and it requires self-control, it requires determination to do something that isn't fun. You know, the only thing about running that I love is being outdoors and being in the woods and seeing the deer and the animals and just the fresh air. And to me, it's spiritual. It's a time for me to be out with God. I love that part of it, but my legs don't, right? So yeah, it was definitely a changing point for me, because in the past, whenever I wanted to develop my body, when things got too difficult or it just wasn't any fun anymore, you just would quit. And there was this constant setback. Like it's like a roller coaster. Like I would get busy doing something for a while to better myself, and then I would just attain a bit of a goal, and then I would quit and I'd set back, and then all the weight would come back on and everything just seemed to start over. And I'm like, I just got tired of doing it until it got bad enough that, like I said in that message that you read, it's like my family, like my husband and my daughter we'd go shopping, and they'd be trucking right along, and I'd find myself like huffing along right behind them going, I can't keep up. And something just clicked in my head. It's like, this has got to change. You're 52. It's way too young to be feeling like this. So I don't know. I just got mad. I think when you finally get sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when things can really set in and change. But part of the journey is discovering a new way to love yourself, because I think a lot of us, especially as women, I don't know, I can't speak for men because I'm not a man, but I know for us women, it can be really hard sometimes to love yourself. So your self-talk can be really brutal. And so the Lord had been teaching me over the last couple of years how to love myself better and to change my self-talk, to be really conscious of my thoughts and what I think about myself. And so I struggled with going into pride or being arrogant. And it's like, I don't want to think too highly of myself, but I also don't want to brutalize myself, So this was another component of that this year, was learning how to love myself in a way that was, really tangible and going to prosper me going forward. And so that was one of the driving factors for me too. It's like, no, I'm going to go through this pain because I need this. I need to feel proud
Mm-hmm.
of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't been proud of myself up to that point, you know. And so I'll tell you, it's like after the 25K even, I felt so proud of myself
Mm-hmm.
for being willing to get up and toe the line every day. And instead of making excuses, I became a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, I'm not going to make these excuses anymore that would hold me back. I'm going to look for ways to overcome the issues that are in front of me and make it happen. Failure was not an option. I had failed so many times, and I didn't like the feeling that failing left me. It makes you feel awful, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you fail something,
Mm-hmm.
you just, it just kind of crushes you for a while. And I'm like, no, I'm going to use every failure that happens along the way as a stepping stone to success.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that it's not truly failure, it's just learning.
It's just learning, yes.
It's just learning. And so I'm just going to journal it, write it down, and allow myself permission to just enjoy the journey and to just enjoy life, enjoy the day and whatever it brought. And I don't know, it was completely different this year. The whole mindset of everything that happened this year was very different. I actually wrote some of those down. Let me see if some of the things that I was saying to myself. So to be successful, you must never make excuses to fail, bypass excuses, and keep pressing forward. That was a huge thing for me. Somebody had said that to me, and I'd read it that I read that said, just keep moving forward. As long as you're moving forward, you're gaining ground,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do a lot of cross training. There were times when I couldn't do the running because I would develop injuries, or I don't want to call them injuries. I want to call them like grumpies. There's just grumpy legs. I had knots that would show up, or
Mm-hmm.
cramping that would show up,
Mm-hmm.
different things that I would have to work out. And so instead of running that day, I would go ride my bike, or I'd do the rowing machine, or I'd go swimming, you know, or I'd go for a really long walk. But I would find ways to cross train so that I could keep moving forward and not just sit around. Becoming a problem solver, becoming proactive in my health, being proactive in developing myself into this goal. Take the situations by the horns and own it. It's like in the past, I would allow these setbacks to own me, and they would like crush my way of thinking or crush the potential that was ahead of me. And I chose, like, this is a choice, was to no longer listen to that voice and say, no, this is mine,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to own it, and I'm going to make this happen. And this stuff I'm going to find a way to make this work for me. Never doubting, always seeing yourself successful. And so one of the gentlemen that I read in his book said something so beautiful, and he's like, whenever I finish a training run, I would celebrate it as if I just finished my race. Well, that's a neat concept, you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
I actually tried it one day. I went out and did like 5 miles, and I got home and I was feeling awful. It was really warm outside and humid, and I don't do good with hot and humid, you know. But I got done and I stopped there and I went, yay! Like jumping up and down, and I went mentally there and started celebrating it as if I just finished the Ultramarathon. And it's amazing what that does for your morale.
Mm-hmm.
For the energy that you leave the race with. Is you just feel like, all right, we can continue on. Even though this was like a crappy run,
Mm-hmm.
I feel great inside. Another thing that I did was when I was out on trails and I felt like things were wearing down and I was getting tired, as I started to visualize the metal hanging around my neck.
Okay.
I would feel it bouncing on my chest. You know, and I'm like, I have it. This is mine. This is mine. I'm going to have this. This is mine. And it would just empower me mentally to just keep pushing forward and getting the miles under my legs and feeling like I was going to be a success. So, visualization,
Mm-hmm.
Making no room in your heart for failure. That was a huge one for me. It's like I just refused, even though everything on paper and everything that my legs were doing was dictating failure. Because this whole 9 months, really, honestly, going anywhere from 3 to 4 miles on my weekly runs was the most my body wanted to give me.
Mm-hmm.
On the weekends, when I went into the trails, it seemed like whenever I got to around the 10 to 12 mile mark, my legs would start to quit on me. Like I would develop pain in my knees, or I developed some kind of pain somewhere that said, I'm not going to let you go any further than this.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the way up to race day, that was going on. It's like I knew without question I would be able to do half of it and be fine. But going the full distance, I'm like, Lord, I've never been able to go more than half the distance without my body saying it's had enough. I don't know how this is going to work, but it has to work. Right? And so there was this place in my mind, though, that I'm like, I can't picture failure, though. I just can't picture failure. And so I just kept seeing it happen, and it was going to make it happen. Learning that there's always more in you than you think. I think that was a big one for me as well. It's like, no, there's always more. I'll give an example. When it was the last long run day before I had to taper down. And I really, really wanted to get in 18 miles for my own morale, to feel like, okay, I can at least get this far, and I'll taper down. And I've heard from enough people to know that if you can at least go half the distance, you can go the whole distance.
Right.
So I went out in the woods, and I was doing mostly running. I had gotten really well where I was doing almost all running except for going up the hills. I walked up the hills and I walked down certain declines, but I had a really good pace set. Everything was going well. I was doing all the way through the woods. I was doing around a 15-minute pace, which was, to me, outstanding. I was really proud of myself. And then on that day, around mile 12, I developed pain in my knee, but it wasn't my knee. It was actually up in my bicep femoris hamstring. Mm-hmm. And it was causing pain down in my knee to the point that I couldn't run anymore. And so I had to walk the last 3 miles in the woods back to my truck, which gave me 15 miles. And I was just, for lack of a better word, I was pissed. I was just mad. I was like, oh, this can't be happening now. I really wanted to get those extra miles in. But I went home, feeling a little deflated, and the pain was there all day. But 6 miles, all day, I just couldn't let it go. I'm like, this is my long run day. It has to be today. I cannot settle for less. And so 6 hours afterwards, my body is still in pain, but I told my husband, I'm going for a walk. And so I went and walked around a block, and we have country blocks out here. Our blocks are 4 miles.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But I went down I'll call it a half a block. I did a 3-mile loop. And I walked those 3 miles, and the whole time I felt that pain in my leg, but I just didn't care. I'm like, I got to get this done. So by the end of the day, I'd gotten in 19 miles, and I was happy, I'm like, okay. It gave me the mental fortitude then to say, I'm going to be okay. And that was the end of that one. And that kind of carried over into race day, because what bothered me the most, I think, about race day is that I really, really, really thought that I would be able to do 3 loops without an issue, that they were 6.2-mile loops. And then by the 4th and 5th loop, I would probably run into some pain, and I'd have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So that was how my mind went. So I was extremely, it didn't fit in my mind to know that I was already dealing with the pain at mile 10, because I had trained for this. I had been on trails. But the course that they had set up had a lot of hills, but they had designed it so that you went downhill and you went uphill. And I had been training uphills.
Mm.
Right? The Dirty Bird was mostly uphill. You know, it was that ski slope, so I trained for that. And I did I'd go to the high school, and I would run on the track. And I'd go around, and there's bleachers on both sides of the track at the school. So I would run half the course, run up and down the bleachers, run half the course, run up and down the bleachers, and repeat that for 3 miles. And so I'd get, you know, just thousands of stair steps so it was all uphill. So when it was all this downhill, it affected my body a lot sooner than I thought it would.
Yeah.
And so it completely changed the course of the day. I really honestly believe that if my legs would have held up on the downhills and I would have gotten to run the flats like I anticipated, I would have met all the requirements just fine.
Mm-hmm.
But so much for the brand new year, brand new baby year. Your body's going to do what it can do, and it just wasn't ready.
Yeah. I had one other question, just as a kind of a wrap up. How did your relationship with God change over the time? I mean, kind of what was your relationship with Him like before and after? And you said He was with you through this.
Yes.
What I guess what's different? How are things different in the way you relate to God after having been through this? Because you're different, and it sounds as if it was something. He was there with you through that whole process. So you're different now.
Right.
How do you relate differently with Him, and what did that do for the way you interact with God now?
The whole way the thing set up, I feel like, was intentional on His part. Even the failure, even the DNF. Okay, so I'll explain that. I've had a great relationship with Him for a long time. I have a very strong relationship with God that I don't know how to explain it, but it's above normal. Okay, I talk to Him from the time I wake up in the morning until I go to bed. I'm very led by His Spirit. So when this all happened, my conversation with Him was that I wanted to have, I needed to succeed at doing this ultramarathon because it represented how my life was going to play out. So what changed between Him and I through this was that I think it just gave me a stronger understanding of His hand in how it all played out, because if it hadn't played out the way that it did, I wouldn't be who I am. And I'll explain that in this, is that the DNF was paramount to me being what I am right now. I needed that failure because when I got to that point in that fourth loop, the cutoff was at 4:00, and I came in at 4:15, and I was devastated.
Mm-hmm.
My heart, it makes me cry every time I think about it. I was so broken because I had suffered so much pain, and I had tried so hard, and I believed with all my heart that I was successful at it, and I wanted that medal, not for the sake of having a medal, but as evidence of my journey, right? That I had earned something for all the hard work and all that I'd learned and persevered through and struggled. It was something to put on the wall to remember, and I wasn't going to get that now. And I was so angry and so hurt and so upset, and then to look down at my watch, and my watch showed that I needed those last 6 miles. That's all I needed. And in my mind, I'm going, I can do 6 miles. 6 miles is easy. That's how my daughter, whenever we did anything for her in school, we'd do that. It's like, when it seems like it's hard, Amy, just remember what you've got left to do. and that you've already done that before. You can do it. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, I've got 6 miles to go, and 6 miles is easy, even though my legs were trash. But I'm like, I cannot go home without getting in all of it. I'm so close. I'll never be this close again. How do I know that my body will even let me do this again? How do I know? Because my knees were so trashed at this point. I'm like, I don't even know. I may have done permanent damage. So I'm like, today's the day. This is it. And so in turning around and going back out there and finishing the distance and then coming back and getting rewarded for that, and I'm not comparing myself to Jesus, but this is what it just spoke to me, is when Jesus had been looked at by mankind as a failure, by the rules of their society, like by the rules of the race. He failed.
Mm-hmm.
And so they persecuted him, they beat him, they scourged him, and he willingly went and suffered that pain and went to the cross. And that's what I had done too. I willingly chose to go back out and suffer that pain on my own to gain the prize. And so, Jesus was killed and crucified, and then he rose again. And when he rose again, he showed himself to be who he said he was. And at that time, people recognized him for who he was, and they turned from their ways, and they believed in him. And they accepted him for who he was. And in the same way for me, that's what it did for me, is I had finished my race, and I came back, and that racing director recognized me for what I had done. And I needed it to happen that way in order to find out what was truly inside my heart, that I was willing to go back out and suffer the pain, the heartache, the tears, all of it, for nothing other than my own heart,
Mm-hmm.
my own heart desires. And so I felt like the Lord set it up that way to show me who I was, what I truly had inside me, what I was capable of, and that I was willing to battle through this life. And now it's like, I feel like that was the thing I needed to do, like the finality for me to do everything on my checklist. Like I've checked all the boxes of everything that I wanted to do in my life for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now going forward, I get to live my life for other people, and I get to pour into people and find ways to be a blessing to them. And now I know that I can do that on a level that nothing can get in my way. Nothing can tell me it's impossible. I know that I have the strength of heart and determination to be everything that I want to be for everyone that God puts in front of me. So for me, this was a very, very big thing. It was a very, very life-transforming event. And my relationship with God is more powerful now than it was then, because I see his hand in it all and what he was going to show me about myself. He didn't take away the pain
Mm-hmm.
in my legs out there. He could have, but he didn't. He gave me perfect weather. It was nice and cold that day, so, we weren't sweating. It was a beautiful, cold, crisp day. Everybody had winter coats on, and we were out there loving it, in our T-shirts. But he did not take away the pain. He allowed me to suffer everything through it so that I could find out who I was and what was really inside of me. And so for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful.
Yeah. So going forward, what are your hopes, dreams, plans?
As far as running or other things?
Other things, whatever.
This is I don't know how this will sound, but I want to change the world. I have a desire to literally change the world in whatever way that God gets me to do that. And my starting point right now is I host meetings in my home where we come together, we pray together, we believe God for healing and transformation of our physical bodies, spiritual minds, our spirit, and we learn and study. And then what God has given me to do is to, I am an encourager, I'm a catalyst, I'm a fire starter. I ignite things inside of people. I know how to find their gold. I know how to see their potential and what their gifts are. And for me, it's to help to develop people to become what they were born to be, and not just for themselves, but for the community. To change that in such a way that we're all reaching out in love, learning how to love one another, learning how to use our gifts and talents to be a blessing to total strangers, to whoever it is that's in front of you that day. You know, how can I be a blessing to you? How can I make your day better? How can I make you smile? What can we do to improve the situations that we see around us? And if I can do that in my own community, hopefully that will blow and grow and develop to where it spreads out into other communities, and we can together change the world by becoming all that we're supposed to be. It's like sometimes you think that you're the world teaches us that we need to be winners. The world teaches us that we need to win the race. So we have to be that one person at the top. But the truth is that each one of us has this extraordinary potential inside of us, that if each of us would blow on one another, if each of us would edify and encourage and strengthen one another, there's room at the top for each and every one of us, because each of us has a different gift and calling. Our purpose is different. And so if you become the greatest hairdresser that you are, and you can bless everybody by doing your amazing haircuts, and the other person is a great chef, and they feed, by doing the best that they can do, and the other guy is a delivery driver, and he's bringing the best, when we're all doing our best, and we're doing it for the reasons of loving one another and making the world amazing, we can literally have heaven on earth, but we've got to want it.
Yeah.
And we've got to take care of one another and help each other get there. So
that's great.
That's kind of where I'm at. I'm wanting to encourage and ignite people to become amazing.
Well, do you have, are you looking beyond what your small group is? Do you have like a social media plan to change the world? If someone sees this.
I have my Facebook page, and I do some ministry there. I am working on a couple of books right now. The one I'm working on right now is called Breaking Through Boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so it has, every chapter is a boundary that keeps you from becoming your most amazing self. And of course, for me, it's spiritual. I learned to pray for the sick, believing God for miracles. Mm-hmm. And I am a street evangelist. I go out and pray for people on the street. And so the boundaries were that I began with, talk about that and how I was able to overcome fears, low self-esteem, not believing I had what I needed, just various boundaries of life. And so that one's got so far 30 boundaries in it that I really believe are going to help a lot of people. Once the books are published, I am going to do YouTube teachings on each of those chapters so that people can get on there and actually just hear me talk about the different boundaries for themselves, because it's not about money for me. I trust God to take care of me financially. It's more about changing the world. Mm-hmm.
So I guess with if people wanted to get in touch with you or link up to you, if they hear this story and want to touch base with you, your Facebook page is the best way.
Yes, that's the best way right now.
Okay. That's actually a page. It's not
Beth Adams. Yep.
What's that?
I do actually have a ministry page that they could find me on. It's called Go Be Love.
Go Be Love. Uh-huh.
My motto: change the world, go be love. So they can find me at Go Be Love, or they can find me at Lisa Beth Adams.
Lisa
I have
Beth
a
Adams
page.
on
I
Facebook.
have a regular page. Yep.
The regular Facebook page. Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you so much. Your story has inspired me, choked me up. shed a little tear here too as well. Thank you so much. I so appreciate hearing about your journey, and my desire is to inspire people to become their best self, to keep moving forward in whatever way is possible.
Yes.
And I so appreciate what you've shared.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my story, because it takes being inspired to be inspiring, and I had to be inspired first before I could become an inspiration. Yeah. So it's like paying it forward. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate. Thank you so much for your time, and